Proving its worth over the jungles of Vietnam, the A-6 Intruder swiftly became the backbone of naval air attack. Capable of striking day or night in any weather, its durability remains unmatched. 25 years later, it would unleash destruction over the sands of Iraq.
One of the greatest aircraft ever deployed from an American carrier took flight. The A-6 Intruder.
Primary mission is day CQ, and secondary mission is day flight time.
Today, a new generation of intruder pilots prepares for a mission aboard a jet designed before most of them were born. This is Attack Squadron VA-34. V stands for Fixed Wing, A for Attack. Below the flight deck, the men receive their briefing while activity surges above. Final preparations are made, and the rescue helicopter is launched. It will hover beside the ship all day, waiting for a disaster that everyone hopes never happens. For a naval aviator, nothing is ever routine. If a pilot experiences a cold cat shot, he has less than a second to decide whether to attempt powering out of the situation or abandon his multi-million-dollar aircraft in a life-saving ejection. Upon landing, he must execute a precise descent to safety. Too high, and he'll have to dive at the last moment, likely snapping his landing gear. Too low, and he'll strike the back of the ship. Too far right, and he'll collide with the control tower. Too far left, and $100 million worth of aircraft will be lost in flames. Like all naval aviators, the men of Attack Squadron 34 face this challenge twice daily. But because they fly the all-weather A-6 Intruder, they are expected to complete their mission even as massive waves crash over the 60-foot bow. Whether under clear skies or through raging storms, the Intruder's mission continues. For 30 years, the A-6 has been the Navy's go-to aircraft for all-weather and night attacks. While most aircraft remain grounded in extreme conditions, the A-6 thrives. The Naval Air Station at Oceana, near Virginia Beach, serves as home to the Navy's attack wing for the East Coast. In February 1963, Training Squadron VA-42 became the first Navy unit to receive the Intruder. At the time, the A-6 Intruder boasted state-of-the-art electronics, embodying the future of naval air warfare. But that was more than 3 decades ago. Now the rugged workhorse of the U.S. Navy approaches the twilight of its service. Even those who flew it in its early years are surprised by its longevity. While an extended service life may validate a designer's vision, for the Top Gun generation, being assigned to an aging aircraft is hardly a badge of honor. Lieutenant Pete Rasnick.
When I first started flying the A-6, is about when Top Gun came out. And so when I got my wings, everybody wanted to be an F-14 pilot. When I got here, I have to admit, I was a little bit disappointed initially before I flew the airplane because I saw these Tomcats taking off. I quickly, though, changed my mind when I learned about the mission of the A-6 and learned about its capabilities. Flying low-level, all-weather, night, dropping all different types of ordnance, I quickly realized that this was the mission that I thought I was cut out to do.
I was initially a little disappointed, but once I got here, saw the mission, saw what was involved, get a real hands-on, get to see your results right away, the bombs hit the target, and what have you. I feel like I'm more a part of the crew, sitting side by side, feel like we're more of a team in the aircraft.
I'll never forget my first flight. It was a low-level flight, and it was a real rush. We took off and flew for about 20 minutes at around 500, 300 feet above the deck at in excess of 400 knots, and it was just one of the neatest things that I had ever done. And I knew right away that that's what I wanted to do, was fly in an A-6.
explains that because Intruder crews operate the ship's oldest plane, they often remind pilots of newer aircraft not to complain.
It's not uncommon to have other aircraft types complaining about their old aircraft, especially the F-18 community. When we were on cruise, they were complaining about their old F-18s that were, 7 and 8 years old. And I looked at them and just laughed because we were fine. Our newest planes were only 7 and 8 years old. So those guys, they don't know what an old airplane is. We fly an old airplane.
The A-6 may be old, but no one doubts its effectiveness. In fact, 3 decades after the prototype's first flight, the venerable Intruder was once again flying into combat. On August 2, 1990, Iraqi President Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait and declared it part of Iraq. What followed was the largest deployment of U.S. forces since the Vietnam War. Anticipating a further push into the oil-rich nations of the Arabian Peninsula, vast armies gathered along Saudi Arabia's northern border. For the U.S. Navy, conflict in the Persian Gulf was nothing new. During the long war between Iran and Iraq, U.S. naval forces had been deployed to ensure safe passage for oil tankers. As a result, when Desert Shield began, much of the Navy was already in position to strike. As the January 15th deadline approached, the world watched in uncertainty. However, military leaders had no doubts about the strategy if Saddam refused to withdraw from Kuwait. Massive and relentless airstrikes. For this doctrine of overwhelming air power, the A-6 Intruder was an ideal choice. It carried a massive payload by any standard, more bombs than any other Navy aircraft. But unlike the Air Force's heavy bombers, which launched from vast runways, the Intruder always had to return to its home at sea. When January 15th arrived without any sign of Iraqi withdrawal, President George Bush wasted no time in fulfilling his promise. Airstrikes began immediately, and the intruders aboard the USS Roosevelt were among the first called into action. Lieutenant Pete Resnick, an intruder pilot, flew in the early days of the war.
It was a gorgeous day, morning, sun had just come up. Didn't see any type of AAA SAMs or anything. Got to our target. I remember rolling in on the target and just thinking to myself, it just seems so benign. There's nothing out here. It's just like a training mission. We dropped their laser-guided bombs. I remember pulling off target, looking down to the left to see the bombs hit. I looked down, they hit the target. I looked back to the right, and a missile just streaked right up by us with a big contrail. And it's like my heart froze. I told my VN, said, there are missiles in the air. Then I keyed the mic, and I tried to tell my wingman, who was now ahead of me, we had missiles in the air. But I remember my mouth was so dry, I couldn't hardly talk. But I got it out over the radio. We had missiles in the air. He's asked me where they are. I'm trying to explain to him where they are. By this time, 3 or 4 more had gone up really close to us, and all hell's breaking loose on the ground with AAA and stuff. I just remember I didn't pull the throttles back until I was about 100 miles away from that target. And I just remember looking down at the ground, thinking, this plane is going so slow. And I kept pushing the throttles as far as they would go. It just wouldn't go any faster. I remember my VN and I looked at each other after we had about an hour's worth of silence on the way back to the boat. We were both white as a ghost. That was the one time we didn't think we'd make it back, but we did.
Daytime missions were not ideal for the intruder crews. Unlike the high-flying B-52s, intruder pilots carried out most of their attacks at low altitudes, well within range of Iraqi anti-aircraft fire. Because of this danger, the intruder was most effective under the cover of night. Not all Navy carriers were positioned in the Persian Gulf. Intruder pilots launching from carriers in the Red Sea flew grueling 6-hour night missions over Baghdad. As a heavily fortified city, Baghdad posed a serious threat, and darkness was the Intruder crew's greatest defense. However, as most naval aviators will attest, the most difficult challenge was not Iraqi guns, it was the long journey back to the ship.
For us in the Navy, the mission doesn't stop once we're out country. With our air base being in the water and being very movable, we don't know where it is when we come back. First, we have to find that. And after going through a tanking evolution again, when I came back from my first strike, for example, after going through this tanking evolution, 6 hours later, it's now 4 in the morning, we're coming down to land of the boat, and my pilot had what a lot of pilots do, have a bad night, and he ended up boltering 7 times. Kept coming down the ship and missing the wires just barely each time. Got down to the point where we had a low fuel light come on, he had to launch a tanker, we had to tank again. At this point, one of our generators wasn't working, so I had to illuminate the basket with my flashlight while the pilot was trying to fly it in there. So he's under more stress. 7 hours have gone by at this point, and we just want to get the thing down on deck and go home. After all this finally finished, we finally got down on the deck. We both just went down and sat in our racks and just were very quiet. Didn't say much. Just the stress didn't stop just leaving Baghdad. It just continued on, just trying to get back to the boat itself.
Despite the dangers faced by pilots and deck crews alike, the war's first days were a complete success. At every level of operation, morale soared. Live television coverage gave the world a play-by-play account of what appeared to be a one-sided war, as smart bombs struck their targets with remarkable precision. Then came the inevitable.
We heard that an A-6 got shot down, and it was an East Coast A-6, and I knew that I had a very good chance of knowing the people that had been shot down, and we weren't sure if they had been killed or not. And then when they released the audio of the prisoners, I recognized the voice immediately of the bombardier navigator who had been shot down. And then they showed, the next day they showed the video, and he just looked terrible, you know, from the ejection and from whatever he was subjected to as a POW. And I remember thinking that we had gone through some, very introductory training into what prisoners of war may go through if captured. And I just remember thinking that he was going through that, and probably lots worse. And it really brought it home to me, and all of a sudden it wasn't some kind of game on television anymore. It became real personal.
The fear of being shot down weighs heavily on any aviator flying into combat. But for a naval pilot, it is just one of many concerns. Their ever-moving airstrip can be more of a challenging target than any Iraqi bridge or scud bunker. With zero margin for error, a naval aviator must catch the arresting wire with greater precision than even the laser-guided weapons at his disposal. For most A-6 Intruder pilots, the Gulf War was their first taste of combat. But for the aircraft itself, war was nothing new. A quarter-century before the conflict in Iraq, an earlier generation of naval aviators was flying the Intruder over another hostile land far from home. In June 1965, the USS Independence was making its way around Cape Horn, through the Indian Ocean, and toward the tense waters off Southeast Asia. As the ultimate extension of U.S. foreign policy, the carrier battle group was once again on its way to accomplish what diplomacy could not.
All the information on the board here. All right, now we'll get...
Among the many squadrons aboard the USS Independence, VA-75, the Sunday Punchers, held a unique distinction. They were the first to fly the U.S. Navy's newest state-of-the-art attack aircraft, the Grumman A-6 Intruder. Most VA-75 pilots had prior experience with older A-4 Skyhawks and A-3 Sky Warriors, making the transition to the Intruder an exciting challenge. The A-6 was the most advanced aircraft on the ship. At its core was the Digital Integrated Attack and Navigational System, or DIAN, as it was more affectionately known. Its sleek, high-tech avionics contrasted with an airframe that resembled a tadpole more than a traditional attack aircraft. Yet the Intruder's design served a clear purpose. It was built for incredible strength and heavy payload capacity. The rugged airframe, combined with its cutting-edge electronics, made for a formidable weapon. On July 1, 1965, the USS Independence turned into the wind, and the Intruder faced its first true test in combat. Every Intruder attack mission in Vietnam relied on extensive support from other aircraft. The Grumman E-2 Hawkeye provided early warning of enemy MiGs, ensuring crews remained aware of potential aerial threats. If MiGs appeared, the powerful F-4 Phantom took over, eliminating the danger. The Intruder had no air-to-air defense capabilities, making it highly vulnerable to enemy fighters. As a result, it never flew into combat without friendly fighters nearby. Many North Vietnamese pilots soon learned the hard way that the Phantom was highly proficient in this role, so effective, in fact, that not a single Intruder was ever lost to enemy aircraft. For naval aviators, crossing the beach is the most symbolic moment of any mission. As the ultimate projection of naval power, they strike from the sea, part pilot, part pirate, swooping in, attacking with precision, and returning to the sanctuary of their floating home. Even if a naval aircraft is crippled in battle, its pilot will do everything possible to reach open water, knowing that within minutes of hitting the ocean, his fellow sailors will be there to pull him from the waves. As the Intruder hurtles towards its target, the pilot must already be thinking about the most critical phase of the mission, crossing back over the beach to safety. Early Intruder missions focused on attacking highways and bridges just south of Hanoi. From the start, it was clear that North Vietnam was an incredibly hostile environment for pilots. Well-entrenched anti-aircraft artillery posed a constant threat, particularly to the low-flying Intruders. Adding to the challenge, the Sunday punchers had to contend with several other issues. The extreme heat and high humidity degraded the aircraft's electronics and radar performance. This problem was made worse by the inaccuracy of early Vietnam maps. Some were off by as much as 3 to 4 miles. However, the most serious issue Intruder crews faced in the early days of the war was with the bomb racks. The mechanical release system had a catastrophic flaw. It sometimes ignited bombs while they were still attached under the wing. This issue had to be addressed urgently, and it was resolved with the installation of bomb ejection systems from the Douglas Company. However, this solution came too late for 3 Intruders, which were lost in the process. Donald V. Becker, now a Rear Admiral in the U.S. Navy, was forced to eject after a bomb exploded under his wing in July 1965. Like many other Intruder pilots in Vietnam, he didn't make it back over the beach that day.
I told Don Eaton, my bomber navigator, I said, we're going to have to get out. And I said, eject, slapped his leg, and he ejected, and I followed 2 seconds thereafter. We watched the airplane. He floated over this way. He was a light young guy, 135 pounds. I was 200 pounds. And he floated down like a leaf. And I floated down like a ton of rocks. When I looked down, the men were coming out with their rifles, the soldiers ready to capture me. So as soon as I hit the ground, which was in a rice paddy area, I got rid of my parachute, got rid of my helmet, and looked up the hill where Don was still coming down, I couldn't go up that hill. It was a big grassy hill because the enemy was coming from this way. I turned around and looked this way, and there was a big jungle mountain. So I had to run through the rice paddy into the jungle area, and I found a animal den of some sort, a tiger hole or something, and crawled in that and waited until sunset, until nightfall, and then I evaded up the hill. But there were people all around looking. I could hear people within 20 or 50 feet of me.
Fortunately, a safe ejection and eventual rescue gave Rear Admiral Becker a profound appreciation for the unsung heroes of naval aviation.
Parachute rigger is trusted as with your life. He is the one that packs your parachute. You never appreciate him until you have to use it. Also, the AME, they call them, the aviation structural mechanic, who is responsible for the seat to operate properly. So you never appreciate those people until you have to use it. And then we came back and we bought each of the parachute packer. We had to find out who packed the parachute, and we had to buy him a bottle of whatever he drank.
Rescuing downed intruder pilots was often a difficult and perilous operation. On one occasion, a Marine A-6 pilot was on a bombing run over the Ho Chi Minh Trail when a surface-to-air missile severely damaged his plane. The bombardier navigator was killed, and the pilot was forced to eject into the hostile jungle below. North Vietnamese troops, aware that the pilot was in the area, awaited the arrival of the rescue team, hoping to strike a devastating blow to the Americans. The rescue force quickly assessed the situation and recognized how dire it was. Enemy troops had surrounded the pilot on 3 sides, and he had to be moved eastward before he could be safely rescued. The challenge was how to communicate this message to the pilot without the North Vietnamese intercepting their radio frequency. One of the rescue pilots devised a clever solution, creating a message that only a naval aviator would understand. The message read, "We think you need a cat before we can give you your trap. The wind is in the first 3 of your SSN. Cyclic ops is now. Do you understand?" This cryptic message conveyed to the downed pilot that he needed to move to a new location before he could be safely rescued. The first 3 digits of his Social Security number, 090, indicated the direction east, which was the exact way the rescue team wanted him to go. After 4 days in the jungle, the young Marine pilot was finally rescued. October in Vietnam signaled the start of the monsoon season. It was during this period of heavy cloud cover and relentless rain that the A-6 Intruder truly demonstrated its capabilities. Previously, enemy troops had been somewhat safe from airstrikes when the monsoon rains set in. Now, however, they could expect to be hit in the worst of weather conditions. The A-6A's ability to operate in such adverse weather came from the combination of its rugged airframe and powerful electronics. The digital navigational system provides both the pilot and bombardier navigator with a clear view of the terrain on a display screen that seemed almost futuristic in 1965. On a clear day, this system may seem unnecessary, but in poor weather conditions, it gives the Intruder crew a significant advantage. Enveloped in thick clouds, the Intruder thrives. Speeding through monsoon rains, the bombardier navigator locks onto a target that the crew will never physically see. The Intruder is not a particularly fast aircraft, and its clunky, unrefined design has earned it the dubious title of the ugliest plane in the Navy. However, it is remarkably sturdy and can endure punishment that would send most other military aircraft plummeting. The key to the Intruder's strength lies in its box beam, crafted from a solid block of aluminum alloy. In terms of construction, the A-6's solid beam, more reminiscent of a house than an aircraft, stretches from one wing through the fuselage to the other, providing the strength necessary to carry such a heavy bomb load. The A-6's all-weather effectiveness was particularly appreciated by the Marines on the ground. Previously, bad weather meant in the absence of close air support, leaving the troops on their own as the clouds rolled in. With the introduction of the A-6, those days were behind them. The Marines could now rely on full air support in any weather, at any time. The Intruder's all-weather capability wasn't by chance. It was a direct result of lessons learned during the Korean War. The conflict saw the largest deployment of U.S. ground forces since World War II. Throughout the war, troops on the ground relied on air support for their survival. For the U.S. Navy, Korea provided the perfect tactical setting. Korea's geography, with its peninsula surrounded by carrier task forces on 3 sides, provided the perfect environment for naval operations. During the war, the A-1 Sky Raider served as the Navy's primary attack aircraft. However, the unpredictable weather over Korea revealed a significant weakness that hindered military operations. Aircraft couldn't function effectively in poor weather conditions. In the winter of 1951, U.S. carriers often spent more time navigating around snowstorms than launching planes. This experience highlighted the Navy's urgent need for an all-weather attack plane. Grumman, already well-versed in naval aircraft, joined other manufacturers in a fierce design competition. In 1957, they produced a full-scale mock-up of their prototype, and by the following year, they secured a $100 million production contract. The 1960s ushered in an era of boundless optimism for American innovation, and one of its greatest symbols was the Lockheed SR-71. The SR-71, with its futuristic design, was built to push the limits of speed and altitude. In contrast, the A-6A Intruder was a model of practicality. It wasn't designed for speed records or high altitudes. With its bulbous nose and unconventional fuselage, it lacked glamour. At a time when America was reaching for the stars, the humble Intruder quietly entered squadron service. Yet, over the cloud-covered mountains of North Vietnam, the Intruder was anything but unremarkable. In the monsoon season of 1966, it completed 40% of all Navy combat missions. However, the plane doesn't fly on its own. The pilot must make the return to the ship, whether through calm seas or massive waves crashing over the 60-foot bow. Since World War II, returning to the ship has remained the primary challenge for naval aviators.
Standing on the deck, I've seen some pretty colorful stuff in bad weather. One night in particular in a thunderstorm, the plane could not see the ship, but we could see it from the deck. The guy had his taxi light on. That's pretty much the only way we could see it. And talking to the pilot afterwards, he said he saw the deck for about 5 seconds, had one chance to make a play for it, and he was there. And that's how interesting it can get out there.
Well, there are times, because of the nature of the mission of the aircraft, there are times when we're sitting on a catapult getting ready to launch, the entire time telling ourselves we're not really going to go, we're not really going to go. They wouldn't launch us in this, and all of a sudden, boom, off you go in the cat.
We were working off the coast of Puerto Rico one night in workups for our cruise, and it was a dark night, like it always is at the ship, and we ran into a thunderstorm. So we knew what was coming for us, and when it was our turn, we got to the point where we're supposed to call the ball, and we had to call Clara, meaning we could not see the landing environment, we could not see the ball. And the LSO, the landing signal officer, saw us and heard us. He gave us a couple calls. The pilot responded immediately. And about 5 or 6 seconds later, he finally saw the ship. I never did see the ship. Right before we landed, I just remember seeing a rush of lights come up. We slammed into the deck, hit real hard. We got aboard, trapped, shut down, and that was the most memorable landing I've ever had. And if I don't ever have another one as a pilot, that'll be fine with me.
After the Vietnam War, U.S. foreign policy shifted toward the Middle East. 4 years after the fall of Hanoi, an Islamic revolution took hold in Iran. The war in Lebanon, combined with the rising tide of terrorism, led the U.S. Navy's Sixth Fleet to take action. On December 3, 1983, an F-14 Tomcat on a reconnaissance mission over Lebanon narrowly avoided a surface-to-air missile. This was no ordinary SAM. It was a Soviet-built SA-7 heat-seeking missile capable of threatening even the most advanced aircraft. The presence of these missiles raised alarms across the U.S., prompting a retaliatory strike order against Lebanese terrorist strongholds from the Reagan administration. The USS Kennedy was chosen as the launch platform to avoid involving foreign airstrips in the operation. The A-6E Intruder was selected for the strike despite its typical night-flying capabilities. Bizarrely, the attack was scheduled for broad daylight, with the strike set to begin at 7 a.m. causing the pilots to fly directly into the morning sun, while Syrian artillery gunners would have the sun at their backs. Tragically, one of the intruders didn't make it back to the ship. The aircraft was struck by a Soviet-made surface-to-air missile while diving towards its target. The pilot was killed after ejecting, and the bombardier navigator was taken hostage. None of the men involved in the attack had chosen to leave early in the morning. The decision came from Washington, far removed from the familiar deck of the Sixth Fleet. Whether the attack on Lebanon would have been more successful had it been carried out at night remains a matter of speculation. However, what is certain is that all intruder crews undergo intensive training in mock night attack missions. For aviators in training, these night missions can be daunting. Pilot Pete Resnick recalls taking a new bombardier navigator on his first night flight through the mountains.
We're down in this valley in West Virginia with mountains going up both sides, and all you could see really was the black silhouettes of the mountains on either side of the airplane, and really nothing in front but a few maybe small lights on the ground. And we got down in there to the lowest altitude we're allowed to go at night, and this squadron in. I said, "Hey, look outside, see what this looks like." It's the first time he'd ever done that. And he had his head in the radar hood. He said, "No way, I'm not looking out there. I did it once, I'm not doing it again."
Weaving through mountain valleys at 300 knots in total darkness is an unnerving experience. Over the years, the A-6 community has developed strategies to make these night flights easier for the crew. Pilot Greg Buck describes one such innovation.
These are night vision goggles. They basically take a spectrum of light that's not visible to your naked eye at night and amplify it around 30,000 times. Makes the horizon appear, makes mountains appear, trees, whatever. Basically, does not turn night into day, but it makes us able to see much of the ground at night. This is how you put them on.
Another important innovation for the second generation of Intruder pilots is the simulator. While this simulator helps trainees grasp flight fundamentals, there is no substitute for real-world experience. Located in Oceana, Virginia, this simulator features an authentic A-6 cockpit set in the center of a spherical room, providing a 360-degree viewing surface. Because this simulator is used to train pilots on the East Coast, its terrain reference accurately simulates the eastern United States. Here we see the pilot approaching a power plant in West Virginia, which is used for mock attack exercises. As they near the target, the bombardier activates the FLIR, or Forward-Looking Infrared System. The FLIR detects the heat emitted by the surface below, providing a clear image of the target. With this image, the bombardier can identify any weaknesses, such as an air vent or generator, and guide the bombs with laser precision. Even as the pilot changes course, the bombardier maintains the target lock, ensuring accuracy as the plane moves away.
Yeah, being at about 1.5 miles. On speed, looking at 120. There's a beam, there's on speed. Okay, putting around 120, 600.
As in real Navy flight operations, the carrier landing is the most challenging part of this simulated flight. However, mistakes in the simulator simply lead to more training. In real-life scenarios, even the smallest mistake could lead to disaster. In this case, our pilot boulders, meaning he missed the wires and had to power out for a touch and go. To boulder is not uncommon for naval aviators. If the pilot is coming in too high, it's better to miss the wires entirely than to risk plunging downward at the last second. The leading cause of carrier accidents occurs when a pilot overcompensates downward in a desperate attempt to catch the wire. On this attempt, the pilot lands with a perfect 3-wire. Over 3 decades of service with the Navy, the Intruder has seen a continuous phase of upgrades to keep up with modern technology. However, one aspect of the Intruder mission that has remained unchanged over the years is the camaraderie between its 2 main crews. In the Intruder, knowing your flight partner is just as important as knowing how to operate the aircraft. Bombardier Mike White understands the value of this bond.
The importance of flying with the same person on a regular basis can't be overemphasized. Just the basic mechanics of flying itself, there's a lot involved, basic brief of takeoff procedures, landing procedures, and so forth. You fly with the same person, do the same routines over and over again. The 2 of you are used to that and pretty much know what the other person is going to do.
When he says he has a target on radar, I can't tell. I can't see the radar, and I have to trust him, and that's just the trust that you develop between each other. On the other hand, he has to trust me to fly the airplane low, to keep my scan going, don't get distracted by something and fly us into the ground.
Trust is paramount in this aircraft, and the designers took that into account when they designed this aircraft by having us sit next to each other, and we'll fly down 200 to 500 feet in mountain valleys in the pitch black, and that elicits a lot of trust between the two, because I can't be looking at the radar and he can't be watching exactly what I'm doing. One of the reasons they pair us up as standard crews, so you get used to your crew members' idiosyncrasies,
things like that, you know exactly what they're going to be doing, and they're very predictable, and you don't have to waste time guessing.
Yeah, I trust him, or I wouldn't fly with him. In fact, I trust any of the pilots that are in this squadron, that I've flown with. If I guess for whatever reason I didn't, I wouldn't fly with them again.
In the years to come, most of these two-man crews will be split up as the Intruder is gradually phased out of Navy service. While it proved effective in the Persian Gulf, the budget constraints of the 90s leave little room for aging military hardware.
You fly an airplane for 7-8 years, 1,500 hours in it, you're going to develop some type of attachment to it. Yes, we all wanted to fly Tomcats, that's when Top Gun came out, but I've really learned to love the mission. Really regret seeing it go. Yes, the capabilities are behind what we can make and what else we can use out there. But it's going to be sad to see it go. We're flying an airplane that's the same age I am. My parents are always concerned about the fact that they're afraid things are going to fall apart around me. But other aircraft, we see them come and go. We see them complaining about their maintenance problems and their shortcomings. But we always seem to make do what we have in the A6 community. We always seem to overcome any obstacles that are thrown in front of us. We're used to having to fight all the time instead of having things come easy. And I think the airplane is still very capable and still has very much a part of our nation's defense.
Born from lessons learned during the Korean War, the Intruder will soon join its retired counterparts in the silent graveyard of southern Arizona's hot, dry desert, far from the familiar pitching deck that served as its home for 2 generations of naval aviators.
The design of the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II has surpassed 60 years. Initially intended for carrier-based operations, it swiftly evolved into one of the most significant land-based tactical aircraft in the Western world. Over 5,200 Phantoms were manufactured, and today they continue to serve in Greece, South Korea, Turkey, and Iran. Originating in the early 1950s as the McDonnell AH-1 supersonic attack aircraft, it transitioned in May 1955 into the F-4H-1 two-seat fleet defense fighter. With its Mach 2 Plus performance, the F-4 boasted an armament featuring 4 Sparrow air-to-air missiles, semi-recessed in the lower fuselage and complemented by a robust search and fire control radar. Thus, the F-4H emerged as the world's first fighter equipped with self-contained search and destroy capability. On May 27, 1958, the XF-4H-1 prototype made its debut at Lambert Field in St. Louis, with test pilot Bob Little at the controls for its inaugural flight.
Our intention on that flight was to take the airplane supersonic on its first flight. We had done that 4 years before in the F-101, and it was certainly something to be accomplished in the F-4. It didn't work out that way. The landing gear didn't come all the way up. And on that flight, a hydraulic system failed on takeoff, so had to bring the airplane in after about 20 minutes of learning how to fly it well enough so I could land it.
Despite encountering challenges during its maiden voyage, as the XF-4H taxied alongside examples of McDonnell's other major fighter program of the period, the F-101 Voodoo, it became evident that the company had a triumph on its hands. The narrative of the Phantom also encompasses General Electric, which supplied the J-79 turbojet engine. In 1951, the company embarked on developing a new axial flow engine that aimed for low weight and excellent fuel efficiency at Mach 0.9, while still possessing the strength and thrust for Mach 2 performance. To accomplish this, the J-79 incorporated innovative design elements, notably the variable stator compressor with adjustable blades and an afterburning exhaust nozzle essential for lightweight and optimal performance at very high speeds. This nozzle utilized secondary air to regulate the expansion of the primary exhaust, also serving to cool the engine, thus obviating the need for costly metallurgical solutions. Mechanically interconnected, two sets of nozzle fingers dynamically adjust, opening and closing to shape the exhaust for optimal balance between thrust and fuel consumption across the engine's entire operating spectrum. This innovation results in a substantial 2/3 boost in thrust, albeit at the cost of exorbitant fuel consumption. The full-scale variable stator compressor unit underwent its inaugural test in August 1953, yielding performance figures so impressive that the test crew initially suspected instrumentation malfunction. At much the same time, the afterburner was connected to a J-73 turbojet and tested with encouraging results. The integration of the afterburner with the J-79 engine culminated in the complete new engine's placement in the test cell by June 1954. Approximately 150 hours of testing on the J-79 was supplemented by an additional 800 hours on the J-73 for further evaluation. A pivotal moment in the test program occurred with the inaugural field run of the J-79 engine. Upon ignition, the test crew promptly scrutinized the instrumentation. Subsequently, with the engine throttled to idling speed, ground and flight test engineers meticulously inspected it for any signs of fuel or oil leaks and other potential failures. Once this initial examination was cleared, the engine underwent higher speed testing before being shut down. In May 1955, the groundbreaking new engine took flight, housed in a nacelle beneath the belly of a converted North American B-45 bomber. Historic footage captures the modified B-45's ascent on May 20th, 1955. After the B-45 achieved stable flight, the J-79's nacelle was extended, facilitating initial test runs to confirm its capabilities in steady, level flight. Subsequent tests included air starts, essential for any advanced engine. The J-79's performance was thoroughly assessed across various flight conditions, proving its mettle with afterburning thrust ratings of up to approximately 13,000 pounds. The inaugural flight-worthy J-79 was transported across the United States to Edwards Air Force Base in California, where it underwent unpacking, ground testing, and installation for flight trials. This process proceeded smoothly, with fuel, oil, and over 100 electrical connections established without major issues. The XF-4D-1, a prototype of the high-performance naval interceptor Skyray, was selected as the test aircraft for the flight trials. Ground runs were conducted at both dry and afterburning thrust levels to validate the fundamental installation. On December 8, 1955, under the command of test pilot Roy Pryor, the aircraft equipped with the J-79 engine embarked on its maiden flight. Taking off downwind to maximize runway utilization, the aircraft required approximately 6 miles of the renowned dry lake bed at Edwards, formerly known as Murrock, until 1950. The flight encompassed a climb to 18,000 feet before safely returning for an evening landing. The entire flight operation exemplified successful flight testing. The J-79 was soon cleared for operational service, and early examples of the type were installed right from the beginning of the Phantom's production run. By the late 1950s, the Phantom's prominence surged following the placement of its first production contract in December 1956. This overview of an F-4B naval model, temporarily loaned to the US Air Force, highlights the aircraft's key attributes. Positioned at the front is the pilot, with the radar officer seated behind. A ladder, visible inside the rear canopy, can be deployed to darken the cockpit, ensuring optimal conditions for viewing the radar screen. Despite being relatively spacious and conventional for the era, the cockpits are well equipped with displays and controls. Occupants are seated on Martin Baker Mark V ejector seats, engineered for safe ejections even at zero altitude and speeds as low as 150 miles per hour. Mach 2 performance is facilitated by the two fully variable ramp inlets for the J-79 engines. A splitter plate diverts the boundary layer of the slower-moving air close to the fuselage, while the inlet ramp adjusts at speeds exceeding Mach 1.4 to regulate the shock wave pattern, ensuring an uninterrupted airflow into the engine. This system operates automatically, controlled by the aircraft's air data computer. Notably, Navy and Air Force Phantoms typically feature distinct tire configurations. Both types of tires boast the same diameter, but the Air Force variant, depicted on the left, showcases a broader design. This broader tire offers an increased touchdown area, allowing it to be inflated to lower pressures, suitable for operations on the extended runways typically available to land-based aircraft. Positioned on the port side of the fuselage is a pneumatically extended ram air turbine, serving as an emergency power source to sustain essential systems in the event of engine failure. Operating down to a speed of 225 miles per hour, the turbine supplies electrical power, transitioning to hydraulic power for the landing systems thereafter. The centerline hardpoint for stores, Sidewinder tactical optical recognition carriage, is augmented by 4 substantial pylons situated under the wings. Along the leading edges of the wings are 3 section slats designed to maintain an even airflow over the wings and reduce stalling speed. This feature's efficacy hinges on boundary layer control, achieved by tapping air from the engine compressor and venting it through the depicted slots. This is one of the 2 trailing edge flaps, which are also fitted with boundary layer control. Similar to the leading edge system, these slots direct air tapped from the engines over the upper surface of the flap. This airflow manipulation enhances the effectiveness of these relatively small surfaces. The flaps have a maximum deflection of 60 degrees, with full flap setting employed during landing and half flap setting for takeoff. Lateral control is achieved through a combination of spoilers and ailerons, with spoilers utilized at high airspeeds and ailerons at low airspeeds. Each wing's underside features a hydraulically operated speed brake, enabling rapid deceleration from speeds as high as Mach 2.4 at any flight altitude without inducing buffet or altering pitch trim. Although extending the speed brakes during landings is safe, their effect is minimal at low speeds. The elongated, low vertical tail addresses headroom constraints on US carriers' hangar decks and incorporates a powered rudder for yaw control. Beneath the powered rudder lies the vent for the fuselage's complex of 6 fuel tanks. The slab tailplane halves ensure complete pitch control under all flight conditions and are angled downward at 23 degrees to enhance directional stability by augmenting the effective side area of the rear fuselage. Positioned between the J-79 tailpipes is the arrestor hook, typically housed beneath the rear fuselage fairing but deployed during carrier landings. This feature, retained on land-based Phantoms as well, has proven invaluable for achieving short landings on runways equipped with appropriate arrestor gear. Crafted from a special high-strength alloy, the hook is engineered to withstand the immense forces encountered during arrested landings. Heat resistance in the rear fuselage is enhanced through the utilization of stainless steel, titanium, and ram air cooling. Located at the far end of the tail is the compartment for the 16-foot braking parachute, essential for reducing landing distances on standard runways. The aperture in the tail facilitates the exit of cooling air, intentionally drawn into the rear fuselage structure above the engine exhausts. Renowned for its distinctive appearance, the Phantom has always stood out in the realm of aviation aesthetics. One of these distinctive features is the power folding of the outer portion of each wing, normally angled at 12 degrees. The folding system is engineered to reduce the Phantom's width for ease of movement on carrier decks and elevators. This feature, retained on land-based Phantoms as well, has demonstrated its practicality in various operational scenarios. With the wings folded, the internal plumbing for the boundary layer control system becomes visible. The sizable nose radome accommodates the 32-inch diameter antenna of the APQ-72 main radar. Positioned beneath the nose is the fairing for the infrared scanner, serving as a backup target acquisition capability should the main radar encounter jamming or failure. The Phantom entered operational service with the US Navy in 1961, prompting rapid conversion of squadrons from older aircraft types to equip the Navy's formidable carrier force. The section illustrates key elements of carrier-borne operations, featuring F-4Bs from Fighter Squadron 74 aboard the USS Forrestal, the Atlantic Fleet's inaugural Phantom unit, also known as the Bedevilers. Prior to each mission, a meticulous briefing sets the stage, followed by flight crews donning survival equipment on top of their flight suits. Upon the command from flight operations, crews proceed to their designated aircraft. Meanwhile, deck crews, distinguishable by different colored vests for identification, finalize preparations for the mission launch. The pilot conducts a thorough walk-around check of the aircraft before both pilot and radar officer embark on the Phantom. The launch weight is indicated for the catapult officer's attention. In the fleet defense role, the pilot assumes control of the aircraft and oversees combat operations, while the radar intercept officer manages radar operations and initiates early interception procedures. Subsequently, both cockpit canopies are sealed shut, and the deck crew raises the catapult bridle in readiness for launch. The flight deck director meticulously guides each aircraft into position over its assigned catapult, carefully maneuvering it onto the shuttle over the wheel section of the catapult. Subsequently, the bridle is securely attached, and any slack in the bridle is eliminated by nudging the catapult shuttle forward slightly. Simultaneously, the companion Phantom on the second catapult undergoes identical preparation, with cockpit checks also finalized. The the deck director signals the pilot to advance the engines to takeoff power. Finally, the director signals the launch, and the Phantom is hurled down the catapult run and over the bow of the carrier at a speed of 185 miles per hour. As the first pair embarks on their combat air patrol, another duo of Phantoms taxis towards the launch area. Upon reaching the designated spot, deflectors are raised to redirect exhaust gases away from the flight deck. Simultaneously, the shuttle is repositioned, allowing the next Phantom slated for that catapult to align its nose wheel unit over the shuttle and position itself in line with the catapult while the deck crew raises the bridle. This launch sequence continues with up to 4 aircraft dispatched almost simultaneously. Additional aircraft are brought up via the deck edge elevators. Enabling launches to proceed, including instances of triple dispatchers. Equipped with a 2-person crew, potent radar, and an arsenal comprising Sparrow medium-range and Sidewinder short-range missiles, the Phantom was heralded as the world's first fighter with independent search and destroy capability, free from ground control, and proved invaluable for the US Navy in the 1960s. Its service capabilities were swiftly showcased through a series of world records. In December 1959, the Phantom achieved a zoom climb-to-altitude record of 98,556 feet. In September 1960, it secured 2 closed-circuit records at speeds of 1,217 and 1,390 miles per hour. Less than a year later, in August 1961, it established a low-altitude speed record of 903 miles per hour. Followed shortly thereafter in November by an absolute world speed record of 1,606 miles per hour. Undoubtedly, one of the most remarkable early achievements took place in May 1961, commemorating the 50th anniversary of naval aviation. 5 prototype Phantoms embarked on a journey from west to east across the United States, completing the transcontinental flight in a mere 2 hours and 47 minutes, smashing previous records. Upon concluding their patrol, the Phantoms returned to the carrier for landing. Approaching at 150 miles per hour, each aircraft undergoes visual inspection to verify the lowering of landing gear and flaps. They're then guided down by the landing signal officer once the assistant confirms a clear deck.
Okay on 3. Highest ramp on
As the pilot aligns for approach, guidance is provided by an amber light known as the meatball, situated on the right side of the flight deck. Pilot keeps this lined up with the row of green lights to ensure that he is in the groove, the correct glide slope to fly the aircraft onto the deck and catch the wire. Different light angle approach settings are configured for each type of aircraft aboard. Following each landing, the wire disengages from the arrestor hook and returns to its position as the landed aircraft taxis clear, facilitating the prompt arrival of the next aircraft. Subsequently, the landed aircraft are lowered to the hangar deck via the 4-deck edge elevators to initiate the maintenance cycle before their next mission. Each of the 4 Forrestal-class ships boasts approximately 3.5 acres of maintenance area below the flight deck, though this capacity accommodates only half of the carrier's 90 aircraft at any given time. Throughout the 1960s and early 1970s, both the F-4B and the upgraded, more potent F-4J versions of the Phantom served as the backbone of the US Navy's air defense. Extending outward to a radius of 400 miles from the carrier, the Phantom maintained unrivaled effectiveness in combat air patrol until the introduction of the Grumman F-14 Tomcat. During the Vietnam War, US Navy Phantoms occasionally operated as attack aircraft from land bases while detached from their parent carriers. These F-4J aircraft, derived from the original F-4B, featured more powerful engines, drooping ailerons to complement the flaps, slotted and hence more efficient tailplanes, and an enhanced combination of AWG-10 fire control radar and AJB-7 bombing system for improved air-to-air and air-to-ground capabilities. The pilot assumes the primary responsibility of flying the aircraft, remaining fully engaged in ensuring all systems are functioning optimally and monitoring fuel levels while maintaining a vigilant visual scan of the sky for potential threats that may have eluded radar detection. In the rear seat, the radar intercept officer employs increasingly sophisticated equipment to monitor the tactical situation and provides ongoing updates to the pilot. The Phantom earned its stripes in Vietnam and remained one of the few US combat aircraft in that theater never to be withdrawn. Throughout the conflict, it consistently demonstrated its ability to meet the diverse demands placed upon it and garnered deep admiration from its crews. However, the Phantom wasn't without its shortcomings, particularly in its early iterations. One notable flaw was its smoky power plant, which could inadvertently reveal the aircraft's position to adversaries. Another significant operator of the Phantom in Vietnam was the US Marine Corps, with a key Marine Aviation Unit, Aircraft Group 13, stationed at Chile in 1968. Aircraft were stored in blast-proof revetments between missions to mitigate the impact of communist rocket and mortar attacks on airfields and to impede potential close assaults by Viet Cong sappers. Prior to boarding the Phantom, the crew conducts a thorough walk-around check to ensure the aircraft exhibits no visible defects. They inspect the underwing pods to confirm full attachment, complete loading, and proper electrical connection, as well as to ensure the safe handling of the 2.75-inch rockets. Examination of the main landing gear wheel well is conducted to detect any signs of hydraulic or fuel leaks. A brief inspection confirms that the Mark IV 20mm cannon pod is loaded with ammunition and free of apparent issues. The bomb load is finalized with triplets of retarded high-explosive bombs loaded onto the wing pylons by the ordnance crew, utilizing a specialized jack-up bomb trolley. Safety pins are inserted to secure the bombs before the trolley is removed. And safety wires are affixed to each bomb to prevent arming until after release. As it falls, the wire breaks, thus freeing the nose-mounted propeller to turn the requisite number of times and so arm the weapon. The two crew members undertake the standard walk-around check before boarding the aircraft. With assistance from the ground crew, they strap in and then don their bone dome helmets and flame-resistant gloves. The next task involves conducting a cockpit check with the aid of a specialized checklist. All moving surfaces undergo a final visual inspection and testing as the ground crew remove flagged pins and safeties, which are then prominently displayed to the pilot. Loaded with 12 bombs and a centerline drop tank, the F-4B of Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 115 taxis out for takeoff, accompanied by other Phantoms slated for the mission joining up on the runway. Before receiving clearance for takeoff, the crew verifies that the outer wings are securely locked down, then proceeds to embark on another tactical sortie in support of Marine Corps ground forces. As the scope of US operations in Vietnam expanded steadily during the later 1960s, there was a corresponding increase in the expansion and enhancement of bases utilized by aircraft like the Phantom, which necessitated fully paved runways. Marines are depicted laying a temporary extension to a paved runway in the image. Ground operations necessitated support around the clock and in all weather conditions, highlighting the crucial role played by Marine Aviation Phantom squadrons in facilitating the success of Marine Corps ground forces in Vietnam. Phantom pilots took pride in their ability to deliver a wide array of ordnance with precision, particularly in close proximity to friendly forces' forward positions, a capability that proved pivotal in crisis situations. The ability to rapidly respond allowed constant pressure to be applied on the enemy, whose precise location was communicated via radio relay by ground forces or a forward air controller. Waves of aircraft ensured sustained air pressure on hostile ground forces and enabled the deployment of various types of ordnance tailored to the circumstances of each tactical scenario. The US Air Force emerged as a major operator of the Phantom in Vietnam, commencing with the F-4C land-based variant of the F-4B, followed by the modestly improved F-4D featuring enhanced ground attack capabilities. Despite susceptibility to communist guerrilla attacks, centralized fueling systems like the one at Cam Ranh Bay offered tactical advantages, prompting their utilization in Vietnam. The Phantom's high fuel consumption posed challenges for holding quick reaction units on the runway, but often circumstances demanded it to swiftly deploy maximum aerial firepower against communist forces. However, this practice exposed crews to heat fatigue under the scorching tropical sun while waiting fully manned and armed on standby. Despite these concerns, the paramount consideration remained the speed of reaction, ensuring Phantoms could be scrambled promptly when needed. After the standard preparation and takeoff, sometimes with reduced fuel to allow the maximum possible war load to be uplifted, the Air Force's Phantoms often linked up with a Boeing KC-135 tanker to top up their tanks and thus increase combat radius with a war load of up to 16,000 pounds of external stores. Here, the boomer aboard the tanker aircraft guides the boom into the Phantom's dorsal receptacle for fuel transfer. Renowned as the quintessential attack aircraft in Vietnam, the Phantom offered an impressive combination of payload capacity and range, coupled with robust airframe strength and advanced avionics, ensuring precise targeting with remarkable accuracy. This footage, captured during an attack, vividly demonstrates the Phantom's capability to engage heavily defended targets in North Vietnam as effectively as less fortified targets of opportunity in the war-ridden terrain of South Vietnam. Targets outside of South Vietnam included critical communication networks, power plants, and strategic stockpiles, all heavily guarded by anti-aircraft artillery and missiles. Even in adverse weather conditions, Phantoms demonstrated their ability to penetrate defences and deliver their payloads. The Vietnam War saw the deployment of the entire spectrum of tactical weapons by the USAF, encompassing various types of freefall and retarded high-explosive bombs. Retarded bombs were specifically designed to allow attacking aircraft to drop them accurately at low altitudes to maximize the force of the explosion. In coordinated operations, Phantoms would operate in tight formations at medium altitudes, with all aircraft releasing their bombs upon the leader's command to achieve maximum concentration of ordnance. Napalm emerged as a particularly vital weapon in the US tactical arsenal during the Vietnam War. While the initial F-4C proved effective, it underwent development into the F-4D with enhancements such as the APQ-109A radar replacing the APQ-100 and the ASG-22 sight. However, both models lacked an internal gun, leading to the frequent use of cannon pods in both air-to-air and air-to-surface roles. Pictured here is an SUU-16A pod loaded with 1,200 rounds of 20mm ammunition. The pod incorporates an external ram turbine to power the cannon, restricting the aircraft to speeds below 400 miles per hour during the firing pass. Thus, its use was confined mainly to the air-to-ground role, as demonstrated in these sequences of typical ground attack passes. The SUU-16A and the SUU-23A self-powered versions, designed for high-speed air-to-air engagements, served as solutions, albeit not ideal ones, to the Phantom's lack of an internal gun. Additionally, the Phantom operated with air-to-surface missiles, like the 12,000-yard range Bullpup. As previously mentioned, its primary air-to-air armament consisted of the medium-range Sparrow and short-range Sidewinder missiles. Although air combat was infrequent during the Vietnam War, encounters with MiG fighters did occur, often resulting in successful engagements, such as the one depicted here with a Sparrow missile, or through cannon fire, as captured in classic camera gun footage. The definitive USAF version, the F-4E, introduced an M61 Vulcan 20mm cannon in the lower nose, along with the smaller diameter APQ-120 radar, uprated engines, a slotted tailplane, and maneuvering slats on the outer wing panels. Similar to earlier Phantom variants, provision was made for podded electronic countermeasures like the jammer pod, seen here, carried in the port-forward Sparrow missile recess. The Phantom quickly garnered significant export orders and emerged as the Western world's most vital tactical fighter. The Phantom saw service with 11 overseas operators, including Australia, Greece, West Germany, Turkey, South Korea, Japan, Iran, Egypt, Israel, Spain, and the United Kingdom. Despite not being the third largest purchaser of Phantom aircraft in terms of numbers, the UK pursued a significantly modified variant derived from the US Navy's F-4J. Designated as the F-4K for the Royal Navy and the F-4M for the RAF, this variant featured two Rolls-Royce Spey afterburning turbofans. This necessitated substantial revisions to the fuselage, although the additional drag resulting from these modifications offset the advantages of the more powerful and fuel-efficient power plant. The naval variant, known as the Phantom FG Mark I, boasted the AWG-11 fire control radar and incorporated various British features. Its armament included the Sparrow missile and the 2-inch rocket, the latter housed in multiple pods mounted under the wings. The FG Mark I remained in service with the Fleet Air Arm until the Royal Navy was forced to phase out its fixed-wing carrier strength in the mid-1970s. Following the allocation of survivors from the Fleet Air Arm's 52 aircraft, the Royal Air Force operated the Phantom FRG Mark II, equipped with the AWG-12 fire control radar and a British navigation attack system. Peacetime ground attack training typically involved rockets, cannon pods, and practice bombs, as depicted in the accompanying sequence.
Roger, about 5 degrees coming on to the attack heading now. Contact the target, master arms going on, and the camera's going on. Going right a bit. Firing now, and pulling. Downwind now for Roger landing.
Roger, Red Leader, join.
Gears down. On speed.
The 150 British Phantoms primarily serve in air defence roles over the UK, with a secondary responsibility for fighter ground attack missions. Number 41 Squadron exemplifies one of the 7 British Phantom squadrons, with 2 squadrons flying ex-naval FG Mark I variants and a 3rd squadron operating ex-US Navy F-4Js. The latter was necessitated by the RAF's increased commitment in the South Atlantic following the Falklands War of 1982. Modern developments have highlighted alternative roles for the Phantom, such as reconnaissance and defense suppression. One of the most significant developments has been the creation of the F-4ES, high-altitude photo reconnaissance variant of the F-4E, exclusively utilized by Israel. This variant features a completely modified nose section to accommodate special HIA C1 oblique photo equipment, enabling the high-altitude aircraft to surveil deep into enemy territory while remaining in the relative safety of friendly airspace. Israel is also undertaking upgrades to its fighter models. Additionally, countries like Japan, South Korea, and West Germany envision a future for their fighters, following extensive upgrades by their respective aircraft industries. Throughout its service history, the Phantom has demonstrated remarkable adaptability across a wide range of roles, utilizing various weapon types on its 5 hardpoints. Some of the most important are illustrated in the next few sequences. Unguided rockets have played a particularly significant role in area ground attacks. Among the most commonly utilized types are the 2.75-inch rockets, with the 5-inch variants being less frequently employed. These rockets are fired from launchers of various sizes and are effective against soft battlefield targets such as troop concentrations, unarmored vehicles, and artillery positions. In the air-to-air role, the short-range infrared-guided Sidewinder has proven more successful than the medium-range Sparrow. The Sidewinder locks onto the heat emitted by the target, providing reliable targeting compared to the Sparrow, which homes in on radar reflections bouncing off the target. The Phantom can carry up to 4 Sparrow missiles under the fuselage and 2 or 4 Sidewinders on underwing hardpoints, offering maximum flexibility in air-to-air engagements. In the depicted sequence, a Convair F-102 Delta Dagger pilotless drone serves as the target. A late-model Sidewinder successfully hits the drone's tailpipe, demonstrating the effectiveness of the weapon. Following the successful hit, the drone experiences successive breakup as it tumbles out of control. Both saturation and precision bombing have been conducted against point and area targets, utilizing a wide range of US bomb types, including highly effective high-blast demolition types. Cannon pods have also proven highly successful in the air-to-ground role, with 20mm pods being more common, although 30mm pods can also be carried. Multiple pods have demonstrated devastating effectiveness in air-to-surface operations. As the most important type in US Navy and US Air Force service during the 1960s and early 1970s, the Phantom was utilized by aerobatic display teams of each service. The Navy's team, the Blue Angels, operated the F-4J until the rising fuel prices necessitated a change to the McDonnell Douglas A-4F Skyhawk in 1974. Similarly, the Air Force's team, the Thunderbirds, flew the F-4E until transitioning to a smaller and more economical type. In this instance, the Northrop T-38A Talon. The Phantom stands as the Western world's most widely built and extensively utilised combat aircraft since World War II, making its production milestones notable achievements in aviation history. The 1000th Phantom, an F-4B for the US Navy, was delivered on July 7, 1965. 2 years later, the 2000th Phantom, an F-4D for the Air Force, followed on February 21, 1967. Just 17 months later, on August 28, 1968, the 3000th Phantom, an F-4J, was produced for the US Navy. An F-4E for the Air Force became the 4000th Phantom on February 1, 1971. Finally, on May 24, 1978, the 5000th Phantom, an F-4E, was delivered to the Turkish Air Force. Although the Phantom is no longer in production, it remains an effective warplane. A classic fighter isn't just one that performs well under ideal conditions, it's one that accomplishes missions beyond its original design. The success of the Phantom was a result of the courage and skill of its crews, supported by an aircraft that was capable and versatile enough to adapt to various missions. The F-4 Phantom was neither pretty nor elegant, but it did its job when so many other aircraft in history could not. That's what counts.
Aviation, the art of aeronautics, began with the dreamers, inventors, and daredevils who dared to defy gravity. The journey of aviation was nurtured by pioneers like the Wright brothers, whose first flight marked a historic milestone. The role of aircrafts in world wars was groundbreaking, dramatically changing warfare strategies. This initiated a technological evolution in aviation, transforming the simplistic wings of a biplane into the thunderous roar of jet engines. Let's journey through the ages of aviation. Behind every great aircraft, there were great minds. These visionaries, like Sir Frank Whittle, the innovator of the turbojet engine, redefined air travel. Then there's Skunkworks' Kelly Johnson, the genius behind the SR-71 Blackbird. His designs combined speed, stealth, and power, crafting machines that dominated the heavens. The contributions of these pioneers have left an indelible mark on the canvas of aviation, shaping the course of history and inspiring generations of engineers and aviators. Each epoch in aviation history gave birth to extraordinary aircrafts, each with their own unique features and roles. The Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was a marvel of speed and stealth. The F-105 Thunderchief, a supersonic fighter bomber, was vital in the Vietnam War. The P-51 Mustang, a long-range fighter, was critical in World War II. The P-47 Thunderbolt, a heavyweight fighter, was used extensively in the same war. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, is a close air support icon. The Messerschmitt Me-262 marked a leap forward in aviation technology. Each of these game changers were instrumental in their eras, and their legacies still resonate today. Beyond the game changers, there are those that have transcended their practical roles to become icons. The Concorde was not just an aircraft, it was a supersonic symbol of luxury and speed. The B-52 Stratofortress, a strategic bomber, is an icon of power and resilience. These magnificent machines and others like them have become much more than just aircrafts. They are enduring icons that encapsulate the audacious spirit, the relentless innovation, and the boundless ambition that define the world of aviation. For more amazing aerial footage, and to join us in this incredible journey, check out the DroneScapes YouTube channel.
The only reason for an airplane to exist is to go fast. At the Great Air Meet in Rheims, Glenn Curtis set a world's record of just over 43 miles an hour, and the quest for speed was on. In 1913, Maurice Prévost was flying a streamlined Dépôt d'Assin monoplane at 126 miles an hour, and Europe claimed the lead in aviation speed. Immediately after World War I, quest for speed became a catalyst for the development of fighter planes. Countries which had not invested in new engines for their wartime fighters would, for reasons of national pride, invest in new engines to race them eastward. Then, in America in the 1930s, the situation reversed itself. Civilian aircraft, like the Travel Air Mystery Ship and the GB, Waddell Williams racers, became even faster than military aircraft. The reason was simple. Same engines were available to both civil racers and military fighters. The fighters had to carry guns, bombs, oxygen, and radios, while the racers were built only for speed. The world's absolute speed record was passed from country to country. And as the racers became faster and more powerful, they also became more expensive. America's Howard Hughes could afford to build his own racer, and with it set a land-plane speed record. But the absolute speed record of 440 miles an hour was set by a Macchi MC-72 seaplane in 1934, financed by the Italian government. Then military aircraft came back into the lead as the Heinkel and Messerschmitt firms competed for the title. Messerschmitt Bf-109R set a speed record of 469 miles an hour in 1939, a record that lasted for many years. When the jet aircraft came out, speed records rapidly accelerated, the British breaking 1,000 miles an hour in 1956 in a Fairey Delta II. Speeds continued to climb, finally reaching 2,193 miles an hour in 1976 by the Lockheed SR-71, alias Blackbird. While speed was the object, there were many other benefits in creating ever faster aircraft. Improvement in fuels, streamlining, lubricants, materials, and the list goes on. Speed produced not only prestige and pleasure, but also utility. The speed record setters ultimately paved the way for commercial transports, business jets, and private planes.